Chapter 6. Oscar padded into the hallway and went to sniff at the front door. Then he sat back down for a couple of minutes before trailing back into the kitchen for a drink from his water bowl. Where was everyone? Hannah's mom had taken Zach out as usual and come back on her own to make a cup of tea. But then the phone had rung, startling Oscar out of a nap. He'd gotten up from his cushion, feeling sure it was close to food time, and hoping that if he stood next to Hannah's mom and wagged his tail, she might feed him. But she had crashed the phone down so fast it fell out of its holder, and she hadn't even bothered to pick it up again. And then she ran out of the kitchen so fast that she fell over Oscar. She didn't stop to say sorry or pet him or even chastise him for being in her way. She just dashed out of the house without even a coat and drove off in the car. She still hadn't come back. Hannah should have been home from school by now, Oscar was sure. And Zach, surely he should be home now too. It felt close to the time that their dad should be back from his work as well. Oscar didn't like being left on his own for so long, and he felt he was getting really hungry now. He pattered up the hallway again, his tail hanging low, and then suddenly brightened as he heard footsteps. They were slow, frightened footsteps, not Hannah's usual happy run. He backed away from the door, feeling anxious. The door opened up and Grandma came in, followed by Hannah, her angel wings trailing from her hand. Hannah looked upset, and even though she hugged him, she felt different. She was holding him so tight, and he could feel her heart thudding as a fast, anxious beat. Oscar nuzzled her worriedly, wondering what was wrong. "Oh, Oscar, didn't Mom feed you?" Hannah held him in front of her, looking into his eyes. "Poor Oscar, you must be starving. Come on." Hannah went to get his special dog biscuits. Oscar waited by his bowl gratefully, but he didn't feel as hungry as he had before. He knew that something was wrong, and he hated seeing Hannah so unhappy. It made him feel jittery and nervous, and somehow all wrong. After he'd eaten, he went to sit on the sofa between Hannah and Grandma. They had the television on, but they weren't really paying attention to it. It got later and later, and Oscar finally fell asleep on the sofa, curled up against Hannah. Oscar woke as he heard a car door slam, and he barked sharply to wake Hannah and Grandma, who were dozing off too. It felt very late. "Dad!" Hannah ran into the hallway. "What happened? Is Zach okay? Where is he? Where's Mom?" Dad looked exhausted. "Grandma told you he fell off the jungle gym at preschool?" Hannah nodded. Grandma had broken the news after the play. "He hit his head 6 stitches. Can you believe it? He has to stay at the hospital tonight because it was a head injury, and your mom's staying with him." He sat down wearily on the stairs to take off his shoes. "Hannah, sweetheart, I'm so sorry we missed your play. I was really looking forward to it. We didn't know how seriously Zach had been hurt. Mom got a call saying he'd gone to the hospital in an ambulance." Hannah sucked in a breath. That made it sound really serious. "Will he be okay?" she asked again, worriedly. "They think he'll be fine." Dad was trying to sound reassuring, but he mostly just sounded tired. "Come on, let's have some hot chocolate and I'll go to bed." Grandma stayed the night. Breakfast in the morning was strange with her there, without Mom and Zach. She dropped Hannah off at school, and Dad promised that Mom and Zach would be home from the hospital later that day. Mom met Hannah after school, but without Zach. She grabbed Hannah in a massive hug. "Where's Zach? He isn't still at the hospital, is he?" Hannah looked up at Mom anxiously. Mom shook her head. "It's all right, sweetie. He's at home with Grandma. He's miserable, but in a couple of days he'll be fine. He'll probably have a scar, though," she said. "Hannah, I've been to see Mrs. James in the office, and she said we can get a copy of the DVD of the play. I'm just so sorry we weren't there for the real thing. Did it all go all right? Did you enjoy it?" Hannah nodded. It felt mean to say that actually she hadn't enjoyed the play all that much, because she'd known something must be wrong. "I remembered all my lines." Mom hugged her again, and Hannah was pretty sure that her mom knew that she wasn't saying, "You couldn't help it, Mom. It's okay, honestly." Her mom sighed. "I still can't help feeling that we let you down." "I really didn't mind," Hannah nodded firmly. Deep inside, she did wish that they'd been there, of course. But when they'd got home and she saw Zach lying on the sofa with a huge bandage on his head, she couldn't feel annoyed with him at all. She sat next to Zach all evening, letting him watch the race car show she couldn't stand and petting Oscar's ears with him. At least now the play was over and winter vacation had started. Hannah would have much more time to spend with Oscar. She wanted to make sure his first Christmas was extra special. She was planning a lot of nice long walks, maybe with Lucy there too, and plenty of afternoons curled up on the sofa watching all the good movies that were on TV over the holidays. She was even planning to show Oscar 101 Dalmatians for the first time. What made it even more thrilling was that it had snowed. The very first morning of winter break, Hannah had woken up to find a light dusting over the street, as though someone had shaken powdered sugar over a cake. It had snowed again that night, just a little more, and the weather forecasters were promising a white Christmas. Oscar loved it. Although he wasn't sure about getting chilly, wet paws, he liked to watch the snow too, sitting on the back of the sofa with his nose pressed up against the window, snapping his teeth at the flakes twirling down the outside. In all the excitement, Hannah had forgotten that her aunt was coming to stay for Christmas. She lived across the country, so Hannah and Zach didn't get to see her very often, and this was the very first time she'd met Oscar. Unfortunately, Auntie Jess wasn't a huge fan of dogs. She didn't want Oscar in the living room all the time, and if she kept brushing at her clothes as if Oscar's hair had gotten on them. She was always very nicely dressed, and she wore a lot of black, so the white hairs really showed up. Hannah took Oscar out into the yard for an extra thorough grooming session, but it didn't seem to make any difference. Oscar had never met anyone who didn't like him before. When Auntie Jess first arrived, he tried to say hello in his normal way, wagging his tail and nuzzling at her legs, and looking up at her with his funny Dalmatian smile, but she stepped back nervously. "Oh, why is it showing its teeth like that? Does it bite?" Auntie Jess looked horrified. "Of course not," Hannah cried. "He's just being friendly, and he's named Oscar." "Put him in the kitchen, Hannah," Mom said quickly. Hannah scowled, but did as she told. Oscar hadn't done anything wrong. She hoped Auntie Jess would get used to him. Oscar was confused. The house was full of strange things, like that big flashy tree that wobbled and jingled, and that strange lady that kept pushing him away. And Hannah seemed to be with her all the time, so he stayed by himself on his cushion in the kitchen, feeling miserable. Hannah did her best to cheer him up, and she did manage to take Oscar for a couple of walks, but Mom kept saying that Auntie Jess wasn't here for long, and it was rude to go off without her. Hannah thought about suggesting that Auntie Jess come too, but she didn't think that would go over very well. She did love Auntie Jess. She just wished that her aunt liked dogs too. Oscar curled up on his cushion, feeling lonely. He tucked his nose under his tail and imagined a long run in the woods, with Hannah laughing and jumping beside him. She'd played with him in the yard that morning, but it just wasn't the same, and now they'd all gone out. Hannah had promised that they would be back soon, but they had been gone for so long already. Oscar turned around grumpily. He was sick of his cushion and the kitchen. Maybe now would be a good time to go and look at that strange tree again. He trotted into the living room and gazed up at it. He didn't trust it, and he wasn't sure why it was in his house. Sniffing suspiciously, Oscar walked around the tree, which was surrounded by packages that rustled as he touched them. The curled ribbon on one of them caught around his paw, and he shook it. It sprang back. Oscar patted the ribbon with his paw. It was trying to escape. He grabbed the package with his teeth, shaking it to and fro fiercely. He loved the feel of the paper tearing. Then he settled down happily to chew the long pink woolly thing that was inside. When Hannah, Zach, and their parents and Auntie Jess walked in from their Christmas shopping trip a little while later, Oscar was fast asleep on the living room floor. He was surrounded by shreds of silver wrapping paper and a ribbon and the ruins of the fluffy pink scarf that had been Auntie Jess's Christmas present for Hannah. "Oh, look at what that naughty dog's done," Auntie Jess cried. "You really need to get him to behave. He's ruined Hannah's present." Oscar woke up and slunk guiltily over to Hannah, trailing pink ribbons. "Bad dog, Oscar," Mom said angrily. "You aren't," Hannah whispered, cuddling him. She looked up at Mom. "It isn't really his fault. We left him alone all day. I know he was naughty, but it's because he was bored." Then she added very quietly to Oscar, "And I didn't like that scarf anyway."